The sky tore open. The night was calm, the kind that made the world feel empty. Adam Walker sat outside his small cabin, staring at the sky. The stars stretched forever, a sea of tiny lights. He took a deep breath of the cool forest air. It was peaceful here, far away from the noise of the city, far from the life he had left behind. Then the sky tore open. A fiery streak shot across the darkness, burning bright like a falling star. But this was no ordinary meteor. It was too fast, too controlled. It roared through the sky, shaking the trees, making the earth tremble beneath Adam's feet. His heart pounded. Something was coming down. The object smashed into the forest, a bright explosion lighting up the night. Smoke rose from the trees, twisting like a ghostly hand reaching for the sky. The ground shook, sending birds screeching into the air. Silence followed, heavy and unnatural. Adam hesitated only for a second before grabbing his flashlight and running toward the crash. A stranger from the stars. The trees were thick, branches clawing at him as he pushed through. The smell of burnt wood filled the air. His boots crunched over fallen leaves and broken twigs. Every part of his body told him to turn back. This was dangerous. But something inside him refused. When he reached the clearing, he froze. A large metallic pod, half buried in the ground, hissed with steam. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface, pulsing like a heartbeat. Adam had never seen anything like it. This was not from Earth. Then something moved. A figure lay a few feet away from the pod. A woman. She wasn't human. Her body shimmered under the moonlight, covered in faint bioluminescent patterns, like glowing tattoos running along her skin. Silver hair cascaded around her, floating slightly, as if gravity barely touched her. Her breathing was shallow. She was injured. Adam took a cautious step forward. Was she even alive? He knelt beside her, reaching out hesitantly. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes snapped open. "You are my mate." Adam jolted back as her eyes locked onto his. They weren't like human eyes. They were deep violet, swirling like galaxies trapped within. For a moment, she just stared, her lips slightly parted. Then she whispered, "You are my mate." Adam's mind went blank. What? Before he could react, her hand reached up, fingers brushing against his face. A jolt of energy shot through him. Warm, electric, like static dancing on his skin. His breath hitched. "Wait, hold on. Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "What do you mean, mate?" Her fingers trembled against his cheek. "You were in my vision. I came here for you." Adam pulled away, his heart pounding. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding. He didn't know this woman. He had never seen her before, and yet there was something familiar about the way she looked at him, like she had known him for a long time. "No, that's not possible," he said, shaking his head. "I think you hit your head or—" A sudden boom made the ground tremble. Adam's eyes shot to the smoking pod. The faint symbols on its surface flickered weakly, then turned blood red. A warning? A countdown? The woman's face twisted in pain. She tried to sit up but winced, gripping her side. A strange golden liquid oozed between her fingers. Blood? Adam instinctively reached to help her, but she shook her head. "No time," she whispered. "They followed me." His stomach dropped. "Who?" Her violet eyes darkened with fear. "Hunters. Something is coming." A deep, guttural growl echoed through the trees. Adam's blood turned to ice. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human. It was something else. The woman clenched her jaw and pushed herself up, swaying slightly. Adam caught her arm before she could fall. "They will not stop," she said, gripping his wrist. "They will come for you too." "For me? Why?" Adam was barely keeping up with what was happening. A glowing alien woman had fallen from the sky, called him her mate, and now said something was coming for him too. Another growl, closer this time. The sound sent a shiver down his spine. Whatever was out there, It wasn't friendly. The woman looked at him with urgency. "Please, we must leave." Adam took a shaky breath. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know who she was, or why she had come. But one thing was certain. They weren't alone. And whatever was out there was hunting them. "She knows my name." The night was no longer silent. The growls from the darkness sent a primal chill down Adam's spine. He had been in dangerous situations before, hiking alone in the wilderness, getting caught in storms, even facing off against a bear once. But this was different. The alien woman beside him, Lara, as he would soon learn, was gripping his wrist so tightly he could feel the unnatural warmth of her skin, like a living ember. Her glowing blood still trickled from the wound on her side, but she didn't seem concerned about it. Her violet eyes were locked on the trees, her muscles tense like a cornered animal. "They are coming," she whispered. Adam swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. Who's coming?" Lara turned to him, her expression unreadable. Then, in a voice filled with certainty, she said, "Your enemies." Adam's chest tightened. That didn't make sense. He didn't have enemies. He was just a guy living in a cabin, trying to escape the world. Before he could argue, the shadows shifted. Something huge moved between the trees, just beyond the glow of the burning wreckage. It was barely visible, a shifting, distorted shape, like light was bending around it. It moved fast, circling them like a predator, never fully revealing itself. Adam's instincts screamed at him to run, but Lara didn't move. Instead, she closed her eyes. A moment later, a low hum filled the air. The bioluminescent lines on her skin flared brighter, pulsing with energy. The air around her shimmered, almost as if reality itself was bending. Then suddenly, a blast of light exploded from her body, revealing the creatures hiding in the shadows. Adam's breath caught in his throat. They were tall, easily 7 feet, their bodies covered in an exoskeleton that looked both organic and mechanical. Their elongated heads had no eyes, just smooth black chitin. Their bodies shimmered with a cloaking field that flickered and failed under Lara's strange power. Their long, clawed hands gripped weapons that looked far too advanced for Adam's world. And they were all facing him. "There he is," one of them hissed in a language Adam didn't understand. Yet somehow, he knew exactly what it meant. They weren't here for Lara. They were here for him. "We need to leave. Now." Lara grabbed Adam's hand and pulled him backward. She was fast, faster than any human had the right to be. But the creatures were faster. One of them lunged. Adam barely had time to react before Lara shoved him aside and threw up a shimmering energy shield. The alien's claws smashed against it with a burst of sparks, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. "Go!" she shouted. Adam hesitated, but only for a second. He turned and ran. The escape. Branches snapped against his arms as he crashed through the underbrush. He didn't know where he was going. His cabin was miles away. And even if he got there, what could he possibly do against creatures like that? But Lara was behind him, moving with impossible speed despite her injury. A deep hissing sound filled the air. Then a pulse of blue energy slammed into the ground right beside him, sending him flying. He hit the dirt hard, rolling over dry leaves, coughing as dust filled his lungs. Lara skidded to a stop beside him. She pressed her palm against his forehead for just a moment. And suddenly, his mind exploded with foreign images. A ship. A war. His name, whispered in a language he didn't recognize. A feeling of longing, of searching. For him. Always for him. The visions vanished as quickly as they came. Adam gasped, staring up at Lara. What the hell was that? Her glowing eyes searched his face. Proof. Proof of what? She opened her mouth to answer. But the creatures had found them again. The weapon that knew his name. Adam scrambled to his feet as the lead alien raised its weapon. It fired. Adam barely had time to think. His body moved on instinct, throwing himself to the side. But before the shot could hit him, Lara thrust her hands forward, and the energy bolt froze in midair, crackling as if caught in invisible threads. She flicked her wrist, and the attack reversed, slamming back into the creature that had fired it. It collapsed with a guttural snarl. The others hesitated. Lara turned to Adam, breathing heavily. "They fear you," she whispered. Adam shook his head. "Why would they fear me? I don't even know who they are." Lara didn't answer. Instead, she bent down and picked up one of the alien weapons dropped by the fallen attacker. She turned it over in her hands, inspecting the strange symbols glowing along its handle. Then she pressed it into Adam's palm. The moment his fingers touched it, the weapon came to life. The lights flared brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Strange holographic symbols projected into the air, shifting, forming letters. And then, in English, one word appeared. "Activated." Adam stared. "What?" The creatures hissed in pure fear. One of them took a step back. "It's true," one of them rasped. "He is the one." Adam had no idea what that meant, no idea why this weapon recognized him. But one thing was clear. His life would never be the same again. Hunters in the dark. The night had become a battlefield. Adam's breath came in ragged gasps as he stood in the middle of the clearing, the alien weapon in his grip glowing like a living thing. It felt unnatural, yet strangely familiar, as if his hands had held it before in another life. The towering creatures surrounding him hissed and growled, their black exoskeletons reflecting the eerie light from the wreckage. They had come for him, not Lara. That realization sent a cold shiver through his body. Why him? Lara took a step forward, still gripping her wounded side. Her silver hair glowed faintly, and the bioluminescent patterns along her arms pulsed in rhythm with the strange weapon in Adam's hands. She wasn't afraid, but Adam was. One of the creatures snarled, pointing a clawed finger at him. "You do not understand what you hold, human." Its voice was guttural, its words twisted as if it was forcing itself to speak his language. Adam tightened his grip on the weapon. He wanted to throw it away, but something deep inside told him that it would be a mistake. Lara answered before he could. "You're too late," she said, her voice unwavering. "He has already awakened." The creature's black carapace flared open along its back, revealing a series of glowing red spines. Then he must die. It lunged, a battle he wasn't ready for. Adam barely had time to react before Lara threw herself in front of him, her hands glowing with raw energy. A shimmering force field snapped into place just as the creature's razor-sharp claws slashed toward them. The impact sent out a deafening shockwave, knocking Adam backward. He hit the ground hard, but the weapon in his hands didn't let go. It tightened around his grip, as if refusing to be abandoned. Lara gritted her teeth as the creature pounded against her shield, its attacks relentless. The other hunters joined in, surrounding them like wolves circling prey. Adam forced himself to his feet. He had no idea how to use the weapon, but he had no choice. A deep hum vibrated through his fingers, and suddenly, the weapon shifted. Metal plates rearranged themselves, forming a sleek rifle-like shape. Strange symbols appeared along its barrel, but somehow, Adam understood them. It wanted him to fight. Adam raised the weapon just as the first hunter broke through Lara's shield. The moment he pulled the trigger, the world exploded in light. The human fights back. A blast of pure white energy erupted from the weapon. It wasn't just a beam, it was a shockwave, a force so powerful it sent the nearest alien flying backward. It crashed into a tree, its exoskeleton cracking on impact. The others hissed in alarm. Adam stood there, his arms shaking, heart hammering against his ribs. What did I just do? The weapon in his hands pulsed. It was guiding him, teaching him. The hunters recovered quickly. One of them activated a curved energy blade, its edge vibrating with deadly force. It rushed at Adam. Fast, too fast. Adam had no training, no combat skills, but the weapon did. His arms moved on their own, spinning the weapon into a different shape. The front end extended, forming something like a glowing spear. The hunter swung down. Adam blocked. A massive shockwave blasted outward from the collision, sending both him and the creature skidding backward. He had matched its strength. The hunter stared at him in shock. So did Lyra, a name that shouldn't exist. The lead hunter recovered first. It let out a low, rattling growl, stepping forward. Not in anger, but in recognition. He carries the remnant's weapon. The others hesitated. The name meant nothing to Adam, but to them, it clearly did. They looked at him now with something different than hatred. Fear. Lyra's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. The remnants, they were wiped out thousands of years ago. The hunter shook its head. Not all. Its faceless gaze locked onto Adam. And now, the last one has returned. Adam's heart pounded. I don't even know what that means. The hunter's spines flared. Then you will die in ignorance. It charged. The choice to stand. Adam had no time to think. His body moved on instinct, twisting aside just as the creature's blade sliced through the air where his head had been. He pivoted, slamming the butt of his weapon into the hunter's side. The moment of impact sent another shockwave through the battlefield. The creature stumbled, caught off guard. But Adam didn't stop. He raised the weapon, let the simples guide him, and fired directly into the creature's chest. A pulse of pure energy shot through its body. The hunter let out a choking sound as it collapsed, its form flickering like static before going completely still. The others froze. Then, without a word, they vanished, their cloaking fields flickering back on as they retreated into the darkness. Lyra watched them go, breathing heavily. She didn't relax until the silence returned. Adam stood there, the weapon in his hands still humming. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He could feel the energy lingering in his veins, as if something inside him had been dormant for years. Until now. He turned to Lyra, his voice raw. Tell me the truth. What the hell is happening to me? She hesitated. Then, softly, she said, I think you already know. Adam clenched his fists. No, he didn't. But soon, he would. Because whatever had just happened, it wasn't over. It was just the beginning. A warrior's blood. The night should have been quiet again. The alien hunters had fled. The battle was over. But Adam couldn't stop shaking. He stood in the clearing, the strange weapon still humming in his grip, his breath ragged. His body felt different, stronger, sharper, more aware, like something deep inside him had awakened. He looked down at his hands, expecting them to tremble, but they were steady. Too steady. Lyra watched him closely. Her glowing violet eyes studied every inch of him, as if seeing him for the first time. The soft blue markings on her skin pulsed with each breath. Despite the injury on her side, she hadn't collapsed. She should have been weak. Instead, she looked almost relieved. You fought like them, she murmured. Adam's chest was still rising and falling hard. Like who? Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she took a slow step forward, lifting her palm toward his chest. Before he could react, her fingers brushed against his skin. And suddenly, pain. A sharp electric shock ran through him, as if someone had just ripped open his mind. Images exploded behind his eyes, flashes of battle, of warriors dressed in armor that glowed like stars, of weapons like the one he held, wielded by people who looked almost human, yet not quite. And then, a name. One he shouldn't know. Remnants. Adam gasped and stumbled back, breaking the connection. His pulse thundered in his ears. What the hell was that? Lyra exhaled softly, a glimpse of the past. Adam shook his head, trying to focus. No, that wasn't my past. But Lyra's gaze didn't waver. Are you sure? Adam opened his mouth to argue. Of course, he was sure. He was human. He had a normal life before all this. But he hesitated. Because deep down, something inside him had always felt off. Blood that wasn't human. A sudden rustling in the trees snapped Adam back to reality. His instincts screamed at him, danger. Lara spun toward the sound instantly, raising her hands. Adam tightened his grip on the weapon, muscles coiled, ready. But it wasn't another hunter. It was one of the injured creatures from the battle, barely clinging to life. It was slumped against a tree, black exoskeleton cracked, glowing red blood seeping from its wounds. Its breathing was ragged, uneven. It wasn't long for this world. And yet, when its lifeless black eyes flickered open and saw Adam, it still tried to speak. Your blood is not human. Adam felt the words like a punch to the gut. He stepped forward, his voice low. What are you talking about? The creature coughed, more of that strange red liquid dripping from its mouth. The weapon, it would not answer you, if you were only human. Adam's fingers clenched around the hilt of the gun. He wanted to deny it, to say it was wrong. But even now, the weapon in his hand still hummed with life, its pulse matching his heartbeat. Liara didn't look surprised. She took a slow step forward and crouched in front of the dying creature. Why were you sent here? She asked softly. The alien's breath hitched. Its spines flickered weakly. To kill him, before he awakens. Adam's stomach turned to stone. Before he awakens. The creature's head tilted slightly, its gaze locking onto him for one final moment. It is already too late. Then it went still. Its body shimmered once before disintegrating into fine dust, scattering into the wind. Silence. Adam stared at the empty space where it had just been. His heart pounded like a drum. The night suddenly felt too small, too claustrophobic. And then he laughed. A hollow, humorless laugh that barely sounded like his own. This is insane, he muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. They think I'm something I'm not. This is all just some crazy mistake. But Liara didn't laugh. She just watched him. Then, finally, she spoke. I don't think it is. A truth he didn't want to hear. Adam turned on her, anger rising in his chest. Then explain it to me. Why do these things think I'm important? Why does this weapon listen to me? Why? His voice cracked, frustration boiling over. Why did that thing say I'm not human? Liara didn't flinch at his outburst. Instead, she stepped closer, her glowing markings pulsing with soft light. You're asking the wrong question. Adam clenched his jaw. Then what's the right one? She held his gaze. Who were your real parents? His body went cold. The words hit harder than he expected. For years, he had never questioned it. His mother and father had died in an accident when he was young. He barely remembered them. He was raised in the system, bounced between foster homes, never truly belonging anywhere. But this was different. A deep, sinking feeling coiled in his gut, whispering that he already knew the answer. He had never felt like he belonged in the world. He had always been different. Faster, stronger, healing from injuries quicker than he should. But he had ignored it, because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. Liara's voice was gentle, but firm. You are not just some lost man, Adam. You were always meant for more. Adam shook his head, taking a step back. No, that's... His breath hitched. Because at that exact moment, his own blood, his own human blood, began to glow. A soft, golden shimmer pulsed beneath his skin, spreading from where the weapon had fused into his grip. Liara exhaled softly, as if she had expected this all along. And Adam realized he wasn't just in the middle of some alien war. The truth of our fate. Adam stared at his hands, heart pounding in his chest. His blood was glowing. A soft, golden shimmer pulsed beneath his skin, spreading in slow waves, as if something had awakened inside him. something that had been asleep for a long, long time. He could feel it, an unnatural warmth in his veins, a strange hum in his bones. This wasn't normal. This wasn't human. Adam stumbled backward, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "No," he whispered. "No, this isn't real." Liara stood in front of him, watching with unreadable eyes. The faint blue lines on her skin pulsed in rhythm with the glow beneath his. It was almost as if their bodies were reacting to each other. Adam forced himself to look at her. "What's happening to me?" Liara exhaled, stepping closer. "You're awakening." Adam shook his head violently. "Awakening to what? I'm just a normal guy. I grew up on Earth. His voice cracked. "I'm human." She tilted her head slightly, her expression gentle yet firm. "Are you?" The question sent an ice-cold shiver through his spine. Because, deep down, he wasn't sure anymore. The past he never knew. Liara raised her hand and gestured toward the weapon still clutched in Adam's grip. "It's not just a weapon, Adam," she said softly. "It's a key." Adam hesitated, then looked down at the weapon. The strange markings on its surface shifted again, rearranging into symbols he didn't recognize, yet somehow understood. ID inte KQY, so and FIR mead. G in ETDCCQUENC match EGT. Remnant VLODLINE. Adam's stomach twisted. Bloodline. He turned to Liara, shaking. "I don't understand." Liara took a slow breath. "You are not fully human." The words made the ground feel unsteady beneath him. "That's impossible." But Liara's gaze didn't waver. "Your body is proof." Adam clenched his fists. His mind rebelled against the idea, against the sheer insanity of what she was saying. He had always been a little faster, a little stronger, healed quicker than others, but that wasn't enough to prove he was different. Was it? Liara continued, her voice softer now. The remnants were one of the most advanced civilizations in the universe. They were warriors, protectors, feared and respected by all. She paused. But they vanished 1,000 years ago. Wiped out. Adam swallowed. Then how? She looked directly into his eyes. Some must have survived, hidden. And one of them had children. The words hit him. Adam thought about his past, the foster homes, the distant memories of a mother's voice he barely remembered. His parents had died when he was a child, or at least that's what he had always believed. But what if it wasn't true? What if the reason he had been abandoned wasn't tragedy, but secrecy? A slow, terrible realization settled in his gut. "They were hiding me," he whispered. Liara nodded. "To keep you safe." Adam's breathing grew uneven. His life, his entire existence, was unraveling before him. If I'm not human, then what the hell am I? Liara placed a hand on his chest, right over his heart. The glowing blood beneath his skin pulsed brighter at her touch. "You," she whispered, "are the last of the remnants." A fate he didn't ask for. Adam took a step back, shaking his head. "No," he muttered. "No, this doesn't change anything. I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to be part of some ancient war. His voice broke. "I just wanted to be left alone." Liara didn't argue. She simply watched him, her eyes filled with something he didn't understand. Sympathy. As if she knew exactly how he felt. "I know," she said quietly. "I never wanted this either." Adam stilled. Liara let out a slow breath. "I was born into a war I never asked for. I was given a purpose I never chose. Every day of my life, I was told who I was supposed to be." She looked down at her own glowing skin. "But it never felt like my choice." Her violet eyes met his again. "Until now." Adam swallowed, his throat tight. "Why now?" Her fingers brushed against his again, and for a moment, he felt it, a spark of something deep, something ancient. She whispered, "Because I found you." The words sent a shiver through him, but before he could respond, "The enemy has returned." A low, mechanical hum filled the air. Adam turned sharply toward the sky. His blood ran cold. Above them, cutting through the night like a black dagger, was a massive warship. It hovered directly above the forest, its sleek, obsidian-like surface barely reflecting light. Adam could see rows of glowing red symbols along its hull, the same kind he had seen on the creatures from before. The hunters had retreated, but now they had returned with reinforcements. Lyara's jaw tightened. "They're not going to let you go." Adam looked at the ship, his grip on the weapon tightening. He could feel it, the pull inside him, the strange connection between his body and the technology in his hands. They had come for him, for what he was, for what he could become. His instincts screamed at him to run. But a different part of him, the part that had just awakened, whispered something else. Fight. The war he never wanted had just found him. And this time, he wouldn't back down. The chase begins. The warship loomed above them like a silent predator. Adam's fingers curled tighter around the alien weapon in his hands. His entire body felt wired, his pulse hammering against his ribs. The glow beneath his skin had dimmed, but he could still feel it. A strange energy humming through his veins, alive in ways he didn't understand. They had come for him. Lyra took a slow breath beside him. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed faintly, syncing with his. She wasn't panicked, but he could see the tension in her stance, the way her fingers flexed as if preparing for battle. Adam swallowed hard. "I'm guessing they're not here to talk." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "No." A deep, thunderous boom rumbled from the ship as something detached from its underside. And then the sky erupted with light. Nowhere left to run. 3 hunter ships shot downward at alarming speed, their dark, angular forms cutting through the clouds. They weren't massive like the warship, but they were built for one purpose: pursuit. Lyra grabbed Adam's wrist. "We need to move. Now." He didn't argue. They sprinted into the forest just as twin streaks of red energy slammed into the ground behind them, exploding the earth into molten debris. Trees snapped like matchsticks. The heat burned the back of Adam's neck, but he kept running. His lungs burned as they weaved through the dense foliage. He had always been fast, but now he felt faster. His muscles burned, his heart pounded, but he didn't slow down. Lyra led the way with impossible speed, moving like a phantom between the trees. Even injured, she was faster than any human should be. Behind them, the hunter ships swooped low, their sleek black hulls gleaming in the dim light. They didn't just fire blindly. They anticipated movement. Every blast was aimed ahead of where they ran, forcing them to change direction, forcing them toward a trap. "They're hurting us," Adam shouted. Lyra snarled, skidding to a halt just before they hit a steep cliff's edge. Adam barely stopped himself in time. He looked down, a sheer drop of at least 100 feet, jagged rocks below. The hunter ships closed in. Adam turned to Lyra, breathless. "Options." She didn't hesitate. "We jump." Adam's eyes widened. "Excuse me? That's not an option. That's suicide." Lyra's violet eyes locked onto his. "Not if you trust me." Adam hesitated. Did he? Another blast hit the ground just feet away, sending both of them stumbling. No time to decide. Lyra grabbed his wrist, and they jumped. The fall into the unknown. The wind howled as they plummeted. Adam's stomach lurched into his throat, and for a brief moment, all he could think about was the rocks waiting below, the crushing impact that would come. Then Lyra twisted midair. Her bioluminescent markings flared brighter, and the moment she pulled him close, Adam felt a shift. Like gravity itself changed. Instead of slamming downward, their bodies slowed. Adam gasped as the sheer force that should have killed them became nothing. They floated down the last few meters until their feet touched solid ground. He staggered back, heart hammering. What? How? Lyra smirked. Seraphim physiology. Our bond is growing stronger. I can shield you now. Adam wasn't sure what stunned him more, the fact that she had just manipulated gravity, or the fact that she said our bond. No time to ask. Above them, the hunter ships circled, searching. We need to keep moving, Lyra urged. We're close. Adam frowned. Close to what? Her violet eyes gleamed. Our only chance at survival. A hidden sanctuary. They ran again, but this time, the terrain changed. The trees became thicker, the air heavier. Strange, bioluminescent vines hung from twisted branches, glowing softly in the night. The ground beneath their feet wasn't just dirt anymore. It felt unnatural. Then, suddenly, the trees opened into a clearing. Adam skidded to a stop. Before them was a massive crystalline structure built into the mountain. Its surface was smooth, reflecting the night sky like a mirror. But the strangest thing, it wasn't there a second ago. Lyra pressed her palm against the surface. This is a seraphim sanctuary, she whispered. Adam took a slow step forward. It's invisible. She nodded. Until I call it. A faint pulse ran through the air, and then the crystal wall melted away, revealing an entrance. Adam exhaled, stepping inside. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, he felt it, a strange pull, like something inside him recognized this place. He turned to Lyra. Her expression was serious. This sanctuary was built by the last of the seraphim to protect what remained of our people, and now it will protect you. Adam frowned. Why me? Lyra hesitated and said, because you are more than just the last remnant. You are the key to everything. The final warning. Before Adam could respond, a deep mechanical voice echoed through the sanctuary's walls. Warning. In my presence, DDT. Adam turned sharply. The hunter ships had found them. The sanctuary's crystal walls flickered as energy barriers activated. Lyra's expression darkened. We don't have much time. Adam tightened his grip on the weapon. He had spent the last 24 hours running. But now he had something to fight for. The enemy was coming. And this time, he wouldn't run. The awakening. The sanctuary shook as the first blast hit. Adam barely had time to brace himself before the ground beneath his feet rumbled, sending small tremors through the crystalline structure around them. The once invisible sanctuary had revealed itself, and now the enemy knew exactly where they were. The mechanical voice echoed again through the walls. Warning. Hostile forces approaching. Lyra's bioluminescent markings flared brighter. She turned toward Adam, urgency in her violet eyes. We don't have much time. The sanctuary's defenses will only hold for so long. Adam tightened his grip on the alien weapon. It was still humming, its strange energy pulsing in sync with his own heartbeat. The same weapon the hunters had feared. The same weapon that had called him something he didn't understand. Remnant. He still wasn't sure what that meant. But he was about to find out. The enemy breaks through. Another impact. This time, the walls cracked. A high-pitched, unnatural screech filled the air as the first enemy breached the entrance. A massive armored creature, its exoskeleton reflecting the glow of the sanctuary's light. More followed, cloaking fields deactivating as they stormed in. Adam took a step back. There were too many. Lyra's voice was sharp. Focus, Adam. I don't know how to do this. He snapped. Lyra grabbed his wrist, forcing him to face her. You do. Something in her voice reached him, something that cut through the panic, through the overwhelming chaos. And then she placed her palm over his chest. The glow beneath his skin pulsed, once, twice, then exploded outward. The power within. Adam gasped as the energy surged through him, a wave of heat and light. his vision going white for a split second. And then he remembered. Flashes of a life he had never lived burned behind his eyes. A world lost to war. A race built for battle, for protection. A final mission: hide the last remnant. Keep the bloodline alive. The moment the vision faded, Adam felt it, the weight of destiny settling onto his shoulders. No more running. The hunter's charge. This time, Adam moved first. A warrior awakens. The weapon in his hands shifted again, metal plates rearranging until it formed something completely new. A long glowing blade, its edges crackling with pure energy. The first hunter swung its blade toward him. Adam blocked without thinking, twisting his body in a movement that felt natural, like he had done this before 1,000 times. The moment their weapons clashed, a shockwave erupted, sending the enemy skidding backward. The others hesitated. They had never expected him to fight like this. Neither had Adam. But he wasn't questioning it anymore. He charged. The blade moved as if it was an extension of his own body, cutting through the air with precision, striking with speed he had never known himself capable of. One by one, the hunters fell, their cloaking fields failing as their bodies hit the ground. The last hunter tried to retreat. Adam didn't let it. With a flick of his wrist, a burst of energy shot from his weapon, striking the creature in the chest. It let out a strangled cry before collapsing. Silence. For the first time since this began, Adam stood victorious. The choice that changes everything. Liara stepped beside him, her violet eyes filled with something Adam didn't recognize at first. Pride. "You were always meant to be this," she whispered. Adam took a deep breath. The glow beneath his skin was fading, the weapon in his hand returning to its original form. He flexed his fingers. It felt so natural now. But one question remained. What happens now? Liara hesitated, then looked toward the sky. The warship was still there, unmoving, as if watching, waiting. Adam followed her gaze. He knew what this meant. They would never stop coming. Not until they had him. Not until they had what he was becoming. Liara turned back to him. "You have two choices." Adam already knew what they were. Go back to Earth. Hide. Try to pretend none of this happened. Or fight. His chest tightened. He had spent his whole life running, hiding, trying to stay away from things bigger than himself. But now he had seen too much. Now he knew who he was. Adam exhaled and looked Liara in the eye. "I choose to fight." Liara smiled softly, but there was sadness in it too. "Then," she said, "this is only the beginning." Above them, the warship began to descend. The real battle was coming. But this time, Adam was ready.